Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. I'm sorry that I'm releasing video only now, but my wife got a little bit sick, so we had to take care of her first and foremost. She's feeling a lot better now, so everything is fine. But we have a lot of things to cover, and first and foremost, we need to cover what's on the front lines, because I think one of the big discussions today is the situation around Bakhmut and overall prognosis. So quickly around the north part, we heard and we actually definitely see that additional reinforcements have been sent to the Kremina area, but it didn't change the situation. The new reinforcements that came in, I think, because like we don't always hear when the previous units that were in that area are pulled out that often. So I think that right now it's just the units that came in rather than reinforced to just rotate the units that were already fighting there and got, well, destroyed. We hear also about the same happening to them in this area here, just south of Bilohorivka. And before I get to Bakhmut, Avdiivka is becoming also extremely hot directions. Like we see videos coming from the area, both around Opitne here, mostly also a lot of messages from Russian mobiks asking for mercy and saying, please, Putin, help us. Oh no, we're stuck here in Opitne, enemies fighting. Yeah, doesn't matter. And then we see like all of these videos of tanks driving around and being destroyed around Avdiivka. This is around the northern part here. So Avdiivka is also very, very hot. The same kind of situation is in Vuhledar. For some reason, the commander decided, okay, if we wait a couple of weeks and then we start attacking in the same fashion that we did, then they will not suspect it and then we'll succeed. Well, they didn't succeed. I don't know what happened, but basically around Vuhledar, we also see new videos appearing of Russians being destroyed. And obviously, one of the big things that people talk about is that with the massacre of Vuhledar that we've discussed a little bit earlier, in the previous months was that now mentioned, I believe it was New York Times or Washington Post, either or, and it was essentially said that it's the biggest tank massacre or biggest tank battle lost for Russian period. It was like 130 tanks and infantry fighting vehicles and armored vehicles that were destroyed in that area, and it was a slaughter. I'll remind you that compared to what is happening in Bakhmut, whatever is happening around Vuhledar is pretty much one-sided. Ukrainians don't really get almost any losses. But let's get straight to the important part, Bakhmut. So Bakhmut is where do I start? So the right now the news coming from Bakhmut are imprecise. I have some people from the ground reporting to me, and because it was like in a private conversation, I cannot really tell that because I was really hoping that some of the news will surface on the media and then I will just refer you to the media. So I will try to say what is available on public media channels and whatnot. So the situation on Bakhmut, we all know that it's difficult and pretty much untenable. Russian forces have already breached inside of the northern part of Kromove. They are already physically controlling pretty much the road here. So right now, the only way to get in and out of Bakhmut for Ukrainian troops is maybe during the night, during some of the hours that Russians are less active. And it's also a lot of the gravel roads, which is, let's just say, non-ideal, because when everything turns to mud, this obviously doesn't help transportation, and the chances of being stuck and just being sitting ducks is a lot higher. So a lot of analysts are basically stating that Ukraine either already should have pulled out of Bakhmut or should pull out pretty much today, essentially, or if not yesterday. That is what analysts are saying. On the other side, we are hearing Ukrainian troops and some of the Ukrainian commands saying, no, 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 we still have people inside of the area. They're still fighting. They're still defending Bakhmut. The situation didn't change. And especially this is because there's also reports that fighting is still happening on the western side of the river. So we cannot say that that Ukrainians have pulled out. So to paint a picture, something that is publicly available, and potentially this is what's happening now. I know a little bit more, but I'll let you draw your own conclusion. So when Russians were trying to capture Severodonetsk and Lysychansk was getting encircled, so when the forces, before the first forces were moved out, actually Ukraine sent in special operations forces into the area, and special operation forces are a lot better, in setting up sabotage, in delaying tactics to set up all of the traps and mines and whatnot. And they are also helping to secure the rearguard fighting, so to help them bulk of the troops to pull out. So on one thing, this is what a lot of analysts are believing that is happening. They're saying that right now it's mostly the special security forces because, for example, we all heard that Magyar's unit was pulled out. But with that said, I also get reports that are some of the regular units are still on the ground in Bakhmut, and this is not a big secret. So all in all, I cannot say precisely what's happening right now, but think about it this way: that it was the similar situation in Lysychansk. At that moment, there was special operation forces that already came to the ground, and they were slowly pulling out. Right now, we've heard that some of the units are leaving Bakhmut, but we also hear that other units are still there, and we also hear that Ukrainians are still resisting and Ukrainians are still fighting with the Russians. What will it change? What will the capture of Bakhmut really achieve? Well, firstly, let's be clear with something. Some people really misunderstand and think that's like, okay, well, Ukraine is now gonna, like, for example, retreat from Bakhmut, but they will just retake Bakhmut in the counteroffensive that will coming into spring. And my answer is no, probably not, because as much as Russians want to paint the importance and significance of Bakhmut, the pre-war population of 70,000 town, uh, it's not that significant. Many analysts from different sources have said that significance and strategic significance of Bakhmut after the loss of Izium, after the loss of Liman, is became pretty much negligible for Russians. It just became another town on the map. So a lot more important things, for example, are Vuhledar or Avdiivka. And here Bakhmut is the same for Ukrainians. So when Ukraine will go into the counteroffensive, Bakhmut, I don't expect Bakhmut to be on the top of the line of priorities where Ukraine wants to go. Because we've heard that most probably where Ukraine will strike is the southern part. Because let's be honest, like if Ukraine really succeeds hard on the southern part and it's able to start siege of Crimea, that's going to be probably one of the biggest victories ever. And especially if they later will be able to secure Crimea and they will be able to essentially secure this whole southern front line, that's just going to ease up war for Ukrainians just incredibly. Also, this is a big optical winning compared to if we're talking PR, like what kind of statement does retaking of Bakhmut sends compared to, kicking Russians out of the southern part and starting the siege of Crimea, destroying the Kerch Bridge. So with that said, the overall Bakhmut's objective and what will it achieve, the most problematic area that's going to happen is going to happen around the salient of Siversk and Belohorivka, because once Bakhmut is kind of moved, and then Ukrainians will start defending around Chasiv Yar, but this will allow essentially to use the highway and move over the highway and essentially start threatening the Siversk Belohorivka salient over here. And that's kind of the biggest development that we should expect after the fall of Bakhmut. With that said, also everyone expects that Russia used so much forces in capturing of Bakhmut, and it was so devastating for them that there's going to be a small pause, at least for a month probably, for them to recover. And additionally, as I said just before, it's now also the rain period and the mud period, so probably it's going to also be quite slow. with this, let's finish up the map update and go to the talking part. Right now, before we continue, please hit like, subscribe, and share this video on your social networks. So in that way, YouTube knows that this video is good and it's worth showing to other people. We need to show good information to more people so they know what's the situation in Ukraine actually. We start second part by talking about Russian civil war. Now, a little bit dramatic for sure, but let's talk about this. So what happened is, we heard news just a couple of days ago that some units made it over the border with Ukraine and they've infiltrated some of the villages on the border with Russia. But who were these guys and what they needed and what they want? I've spent some time researching this because at first when I was streaming, I was also only hearing the news that Russians were saying. And to put it in perspective, what I was hearing and why I thought that there was no actual troops that crossed Ukrainian-Russia border. So let me see if I can do it. So what happened is that there was an attack and some terrorists entered the territory of Russia, and these terrorists, they killed the hostages that they took, more than 100 people hostages, and they also killed the school bus driver that was not able to sing the Ukrainian national anthem. And actually there was also kids that apparently got hurt in this situation. It was like there was many kids killed, which turned out that actually it's not many kids killed, but it's just one girl that was killed, and she was actually not killed. She survived because she was a 10-year-old boy named Fedya who was actually 11. And so this Fedya was actually named Ilarion. So this Fedya Ilarion actually didn't get killed. He survived, but he got wounded in a back, which was actually a wound to the chest, which was actually a shrapnel piece to the back. And what happened is that this Fedya Ilarion not only not died or apparently died, but he also instantly became a propaganda piece, and the posters started appearing about this Fedya, where first he was just kind of being shot at, and then the others turns out that he was defending two other girls that from these terrorists, and he actually didn't die, and instead like he tried to stop the bullets from the terrorists from shooting at the girls, but it turned out actually that he grabbed some kind of weapon that was laying around and entered the gunfight with these apparent attackers. That's the story of the media that was Russia putting forward. So now we know that these guys are actually real. They are quite public. Now they are quite aggressive, to put it mildly, in their views, but they're anti-imperialists. They want essentially to build Russia for Russians. And they want essentially say, okay, maybe we should make Russia a smaller state, maybe, to the national Slavic origins of Muscovy, and we just need to stop with the empire because we want to have like our mono-nationalistic state built. So these are the guys that are motivated by that. So for them, Putin is a traitor because they see him essentially as a person that went on the genocide against the Slavic populations that they considered brothers. So while they were fighting and supporting armed forces of Ukraine, they're still a volunteer group from the Russian Federation. And I mean, it only makes sense that this group will go back into Russia and start steering the situation up. I mean, that's what they want. We know that they went on the territory of Russia. And important thing, very, very important thing, right? For some reason, a lot of the Western media, again, is reporting this, that, oh, there was this peaceful nation of Russia, and then these guys with weapons came to the territory of Russia and broke the peace. No, they didn't. They didn't break the peace. Like, Russia is at war. Russia is an aggressive state in the war. It doesn't mean like that you bring war only to your neighbor state and then nothing happens to yours. But the point is, it's literally Russians fighting Russians. And for me, at that moment, I don't care anymore. Because for me, they are doing what I want Russian liberal opposition to be doing, is take weapons and make sure that they send some kind of activity. These guys show that the border and the response of Russian Federation is completely inadequate, and it's not following any ordeal manner and they've actually gained quite a lot of notoriety. So it was a PR stunt, and they achieved indeed what they wanted. And finally, some really good news to kind of end it up today is that we hear a lot of good stuff about tanks and weapons for Ukraine. Remember, I told you that Ukraine is going to get drowned in tanks? It indeed will. We hear from Great Britain that Great Britain doubles the number of Challengers that will be delivered to Ukraine. We hear from Rheinmetall that they're looking to build a plant of production of tanks inside of Ukraine, which is wow, crazy. We also hear that Rheinmetall also is trying to negotiate with Switzerland to buy out some of the Leopard 2s and Leopard 1s that Switzerland has to essentially get a couple of more hundreds of tanks into Ukraine. So all in all, Ukraine is being constant, like all of these delivery schedules are being constantly updated and updated and updated. Ukraine is getting the weapons it needs. We finally going into year 2, we are scaling up the deliveries. And a lot of people gave me shit for that at the start when I said, like, this is how the deliveries will go. Because we in the West, we need to speed up, we need to build our production, we need to build our base, and that's how we're going to support Ukraine. It's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. People said, no, it's just going to be our stockpiles, and then we're not going to invest in it. It's like, you don't understand then the industrial economics. Because now long-term contracts are being made, and these long-term contracts are what's going to bring Ukraine to victory. And Russia, well, I mean, now there is a civil fighting group, so potentially, I think their idea was like, well, I don't support maybe all their methods and how they do things, but they definitely send a clear message on the fact that maybe we should break up Russia. I approve of that. To wrap it up, big thanks to all of the people that are supporting this channel. This really helps a lot, and I'll see you guys next time. Slava Ukraini, everything will be Ukraine.